A single standard 31-gallon barrel of craft beer poured as pence in a brewery taproom generates $1,500 in gross revenue. If that exact same barrel is packaged into kegs and shipped to a regional distributor, the brewery will walk away with less than $200. This massive financial gulf explains why the craft beer boom has transformed from a passion project into a high-stakes battle for survival where producing more product can actually accelerate bankruptcy. Behind the gleaming stainless steel tanks of a local brewhouse lies a complex web of debt and real estate dynamics that most amateur brewers never foresee. In 2025, this hidden pressure reached a breaking point, forcing hundreds of established breweries to lock their doors forever despite having loyal customer bases. The dream of owning a brewery usually starts in a garage with a homebrewing kit and a few friends praising a batch of pale ale. It is easy to imagine a warm taproom filled with laughing customers and cash registers ringing while the brewer stands proudly in the back. But transitioning from a hobbyist making 5 gallons of beer to a commercial manufacturer producing thousands of barrels changes everything. The romantic vision of the craft brewer fades quickly under the reality of heavy industrial manufacturing regulations and compressed profit margins. Operating a commercial brewery involves running a capital-intensive chemical processing facility that requires constant sanitation and temperature control, far removed from the cozy atmosphere of a local pub. Every batch of beer is a constant race against spoilage and oxidation. The financial stakes are high because a single microscopic wild yeast strain can ruin a 20-barrel batch, pouring thousands of dollars down the drain. To understand why so many breweries are failing, one must look at the immense capital required just to open the doors. The entry costs are astronomical. A brand new 10-barrel brewhouse system containing a mash tun, a boil kettle, a hot liquor tank, and support pumps will easily cost between $80,000 and $150,000. Beyond the brewhouse, fermenters and bright tanks cost between $8,000 and $15,000 each depending on their capacity. A starting brewery needs at least 4 of these tanks to maintain a steady production schedule. Then comes the canning line, a piece of machinery that has become essential in a market where consumers expect packaged beer. An entry-level, semi-automated canning system that fills 15 cans per minute costs around $30,000. For a brewery that wants to distribute widely, a faster, fully automated canning line that fills 60 cans per minute can cost over $150,000. But buying the equipment is often the easiest part of the startup phase. Installing it is where many prospective owners run out of money before they can even brew their first test batch. A professional commercial space must be heavily retrofitted to support a brewing operation. Sloped concrete floors with specialized trench drains are mandatory because brewing uses massive amounts of water. In fact, it takes about 5 gallons of water to produce a single gallon of beer, with the remaining 4 gallons ending up as wastewater. Cutting into a concrete slab to install these drains and sealing them with acid-resistant urethane can cost up to $50,000. Plumbing is required for steam boilers that heat the kettles and glycol chillers that pump coolant through jacketed tanks to control fermentation. The copper piping and electrical upgrades required to run these industrial utilities frequently cost another $75,000. Many municipalities charge heavy impact fees because brewery wastewater is concentrated with yeast and sugars that disrupt city sewage systems. Some cities demand that breweries install their own pretreatment systems, which can add $40,000 to the initial construction budget. Between equipment, lease deposits, licensing, and retrofits, a modest 10-barrel brewery taproom requires up to $1 million in startup capital. Most aspiring brewers do not have $1 million in cash, forcing them to rely on debt financing to fund their dream. To secure the necessary cash, founders typically rely on small business administration loans or equipment leasing companies. SBA 7 loans are a common route, but they require personal guarantees, meaning the owners must pledge their homes or personal assets as collateral. Imagine signing a document that allows the bank to seize your family home if your brewery fails to sell enough pale ale. The interest rates on these loans are not cheap. A $1 million loan at a 9% interest rate amortized over 10 years results in a monthly payment of over $12,600. This means the brewery must generate $12,600 in cash every single month just to cover the cost of the money they borrowed. This fixed debt service creates an immediate, heavy pressure before a single employee is paid or a single ingredient is purchased. If the brewery has a slow month due to bad weather or a local economic downturn, that loan payment does not decrease. It remains constant, slowly draining the company of its precious working capital. To pay down this debt and cover operating costs, a brewery must manage its monthly overhead. The daily expenses of making beer are split between fixed overhead and variable costs. Variable costs begin with the raw ingredients, which are malted barley, hops, yeast, and water. Malted barley forms the fermentable base of the beer, with a standard 20-barrel batch requiring about 1,000 pounds of grain. If purchased in bulk bags, malt costs around 50 cents per pound, meaning $500 per batch. But specialty malts, like roasted barley for stouts or caramel malts for red ales, can cost over $1 per pound, pushing the grain cost higher. Then there are the hops, which provide bitterness and aroma. These hops are incredibly expensive, with popular proprietary varieties like Citra and Mosaic costing between $10 and $15 per pound. A double dry hopped IPA can require up to 4 pounds of hops per barrel. For a 20-barrel batch, that is 80 pounds of hops, adding up to $1,200 for a single ingredient. Yeast adds another critical expense, with a single pitch for a 20-barrel batch costing around $800 from a laboratory. To save money, brewers harvest and reuse yeast from previous batches, but they can only do this about 7 to 10 times before the yeast mutates and ruins the flavor profile of the beer. Once the beer is brewed, packaging costs begin to collapse the profit margin. For breweries that distribute, packaging materials are a massive ongoing expense. A standard 12-ounce aluminum can seem cheap, but when you add the lid, the adhesive label, the plastic carrier, and the cardboard tray, the costs mount rapidly. A small brewery buying blank cans and applying adhesive vinyl labels pays about 45 cents per can. A standard case of 24 cans costs nearly $11 just for the packaging materials before a single drop of beer is poured inside. Buying printed cans by the truckload drops this cost to 18 cents per can, but requires spending $50,000 upfront for each design. This cash outlay creates a barrier that keeps small breweries trapped in high-cost, low-volume production. After packaging, the government takes its share. Excise taxes are a direct tax on the volume of alcohol produced. The federal government charges small craft brewers $3.50 per barrel on the first 60,000 barrels produced each year. But the state governments charge their own excise taxes, and the rates are highly unequal. A brewery operating in Wyoming pays a low rate of just 1.9 cents per gallon, which is about 59 cents per barrel. If that same brewery is located in Tennessee, the state excise tax is $1.29 per gallon, which is nearly $40 per barrel. This tax disparity means a Tennessee brewer pays 60 times more in state excise taxes than a brewer in Wyoming for the exact same volume of beer. Beyond variables like ingredients and taxes, a brewery has significant fixed overhead that must be paid regardless of how much beer is sold. Rent for a commercial warehouse space suitable for brewing typically ranges from $4,000 to $12,000 per month. Utilities are another massive burden. Heating kettles with natural gas, running chillers day and night, powering bright tank cooling jackets, and operating heavy pumps consumes a massive amount of energy. Monthly electric and gas bills easily run between $2,000 and $5,000, with water and sewage fees adding several hundred more. Labor represents another major hurdle because brewing is a physical job that requires lifting 50-pound bags of grain and scrubbing tanks. A small brewery needs at least one head brewer, who earns a median salary of $55,000 per year. They also need packaging assistants and cellar workers, who are typically paid hourly wages. Even with a skeleton crew, payroll taxes and workers' compensation insurance can add 15% to the total labor cost. Insurance is expensive because breweries combine manufacturing hazards like steam boilers with the hospitality liability of serving alcohol, general liability, liquor liability, property protection, and workers' compensation insurance can easily cost $10,000 to $20,000 per year. All of these fixed and variable costs must be covered by the revenue generated from selling the beer. This is where the choice of revenue channels determines whether the business survives or goes bankrupt. A brewery has two primary ways to sell its product, which are direct retail sales in a taproom or wholesale distribution to external retailers. The taproom is the financial engine that keeps small breweries alive. When a customer walks into a taproom and orders a pint of beer for $7, the gross margin is incredibly high. The actual cost of the liquid in the glass, including ingredients and excise tax, is about 50 cents. Even after adding the cost of the staff member who poured it and the utilities to keep the room lit, the brewery keeps about $5 in profit from that single pour. This represents a gross profit margin of approximately 75%. At this rate, selling just 500 barrels of beer annually through the taproom can generate enough cash to cover the fixed overhead of a small operation. But taprooms are limited by physical space and local geography. A taproom can only serve the people who live nearby or are willing to travel to the facility. To grow beyond this local limit, many owners decide to expand into wholesale distribution. Wholesale distribution sounds like the natural path to success because it allows a brewery to scale its brand and place cans on grocery store shelves. But the financial reality of wholesale is a trap that has destroyed countless passion projects. Alcohol sales are governed by the three-tier system, which was established after the repeal of Prohibition in 1933. This system forces breweries to sell to licensed distributors who then sell to retailers like bars and grocery stores. Each tier of this system demands a profit margin, which compresses the amount of money that flows back to the brewer. When a distributor buys beer from a brewery, they typically demand a gross margin of 25 to 35%. The distributor then sells the beer to a retailer, who adds another markup of 25 to 50% before selling it to the consumer. To make this clear, consider a case of 24 cans of craft beer that a consumer buys at a grocery store for $40. The grocery store bought that case from the distributor for about $28. The distributor bought that case from the brewery for about $19. Recall that the brewery spent nearly $11 just on the cans, labels, lids, and cardboard package. Subtracting ingredients, labor, utilities, and excise taxes leaves the brewery with less than $2 in profit on that entire case. This represents a net profit margin of less than 5% on distributed packaged beer. To survive on a 5% net profit margin, a brewery must produce and sell huge volumes of beer, but producing huge volumes of beer requires a larger brewhouse, more fermenters, a faster canning line, and a larger warehouse. This requires taking on more debt, which increases the monthly fixed overhead and raises the break-even point even higher. This dynamic is what industry experts call the efficiency trap or the brewing dead zone. A brewery in this dead zone is producing between 2,000 and 10,000 barrels of beer per year. They are too large for the low overhead of a neighborhood taproom, but too small to achieve the economies of scale of national brands. They must maintain a sales staff to push their beer to distributors and pay for delivery trucks and fuel. Stuck in a cycle of high debt and low margins, a single lost distributor contract or a drop in retail sales can trigger insolvency. The wholesale market is crowded with thousands of competing brands fighting for a limited amount of shelf space. Grocery stores and bottle shops are constantly rationalizing their inventory, meaning they prune slow-moving brands to make room for new ones. If a brewery's beer does not sell quickly, it is removed from the shelves, and the distributor will stop placing orders. This leaves the brewery with thousands of empty cans and ingredients they cannot use, but with the loan payments still due. To offset these thin distribution margins, some breweries try to diversify their revenue channels by selling merchandise like t-shirts, hats, pint glasses, and hoodies. While merchandise can have gross margins of 50%, it requires holding inventory that may not sell, tying up precious cash flow in boxes of unsold apparel. Other breweries host private events like weddings or corporate gatherings in their taprooms to generate high-margin rental fees. But hosting events requires additional staff and can alienate regular local customers who arrive only to find the taproom closed for a private party. The fundamental challenge remains that beer is a perishable product with a limited shelf life. Unlike spirits or wine, which can sit in a warehouse for years and often improve with age, craft beer, especially hop-heavy IPAs, degrades rapidly. After 90 days in a warm warehouse or on a grocery store shelf, the bright hop aromas fade, leaving a dull, cardboard-like flavor. If a distributor returns expired beer, the brewery must absorb the cost, writing off the lost inventory while still paying the excise taxes on it. This highlights the critical importance of cash flow management, which is the ultimate driver of success or failure in the industry. Many brewery owners focus entirely on their profit and loss statements, celebrating when they show a theoretical net profit on paper. A brewery can show a net profit on paper while having a completely empty bank account because profit is not the same as cash. This cash flow gap occurs because the brewery must pay for raw ingredients and packaging materials up front, but distributors may take 30 or 60 days to pay their invoices. During that 60-day window, the brewery must still pay its rent, its employees, its utilities, and its monthly loan payments. If a brewery grows too quickly, they must buy more ingredients to support larger wholesale orders, draining their cash reserves before the revenue from those orders arrives. This cash flow squeeze is the primary reason why so many mid-sized breweries failed during the industry correction of 2024 and 2025. The number of operating craft breweries declined from 9,612 in 2024 to 9,578 in 2025. This contraction represents the first sustained decline in brewery count in nearly 2 decades. In 2025, 434 breweries closed their doors permanently, while only 268 new breweries opened. The survivors of this correction are changing their strategies to adapt to this mature market. Many successful operators are intentionally shrinking their distribution footprints, pulling their cans off grocery store shelves to focus entirely on their local taprooms. By producing less beer but selling a higher percentage of it directly to consumers, these breweries can maintain healthy profit margins with much lower overhead. This approach requires less equipment, fewer employees, less debt, and a smaller facility, making the business far more resilient to market shocks. It shifts the focus of the brewery from a volume manufacturing business to a neighborhood hospitality establishment. For these small local breweries, success is driven by the appeal of their retail spaces rather than the efficiency of their canning lines. They must cultivate a loyal community of customers who visit the taproom, purchase fresh pints, attend local events, and buy cans directly from the source. This retail model captures the full retail margin of the beer, bypasses the 3-tier distribution system, reduces packaging material needs, and avoids wholesale cash flow gaps. Running a successful hospitality business requires a completely different skill set than brewing beer. A founder must manage customer service, taproom aesthetics, event programming, and local marketing. The brewer who loves the science of fermentation must learn to love the details of hospitality and retail management. Those who cannot make this transition often find their businesses failing, even if their beer wins awards at national festivals. The market favors financial discipline and strategic alignment of production capacity over raw product quality. Owning a brewery remains a compelling dream for thousands of homebrewers, but the path to profitability is narrow and unforgiving. It is a capital-intensive journey where a passion for craft beer must be matched by a rigorous understanding of manufacturing economics and retail dynamics. Crushing debt service and compressed margins represent the real overhead of a brewery, far outweighing the basic costs of malt and hops. For those who build their businesses around a strong retail footprint, the taproom can still provide a sustainable livelihood. But those who dream of scaling into distribution giants without a massive cash reserve will likely join the growing list of closed facilities. The next time you enjoy a pint of craft beer at a local taproom, remember the complex financial balancing act required to get that liquid into your glass. The survival of that local business depends on your direct support, one high margin pint at a time.